right, so in this lesson, we're going to cover how we can use open strings along with fretted notes to get a shimmery sort of sound, and we're going to stick within the key of G. Now we can do a lot of this in the key of E. I'm sure you're very familiar with how to use these kinds of shapes when you're playing in the key of E, but as you can hear, there's some tuning issues. I got to tune my guitar. I've got to temper the tuning to make that kind of playing work. And truth be told, I don't really like playing in the key of E all that much because I have to adjust for the open strings not fitting within the key. So I like to use G shapes, I like to use C shapes, I like to use D shapes. And so we're going to stick within the key of G. And you're probably familiar with one convention that is all over worship guitar playing. And so you've probably seen the C chord that moves up 2 frets to a D add 4. We usually do this if we want to play C to D, but we want to add some very interesting dissonance in the sound of the chord by having the F sharp ring directly against that G. And so we're going to isolate how that G, that open G, interacts with the string below and the string above it to give us some really cool moving lines that are dissonant and consonant. It just kind of moves in and out and gives it this very shimmery quality. So a really great exercise to use when you're learning this at first is to just use these 3 strings, D, G, and B. And what we're going to do is we're going to take these 2 fingers and our ring finger, and we're going to move up through a series of sixths. So the 2 notes that are already spaced a sixth apart are your D on the 4th string and your B on the 2nd string. So we'll leave those open, and then we're going to go to E at the 2nd fret and C at the 1st fret. So we're only worrying about those 2 strings, and we're going to move and modify this shape as we go up the neck. So D and B, E and C. We're going to move that shape up 2 frets to F sharp and D. This is where we make the change. We're going to go to G and then E on the same fret. So now we're at the 5th fret. So I'm going to run through that again. Open D and open B. E and C on the 2nd fret to the 1st fret. Move that shape up 2 frets to F sharp and D. And then we're going to go to G and E on the 5th fret together. And for that shape, you'll use your middle finger and your ring finger. Then the next part of the pattern just moves those 2 notes up another 2 frets to A and F sharp. So all together, we have D and B, E and C, F sharp and D, G and E, A and F sharp. And then we go back to our old shape of using middle finger and pointer finger to go to B and G. Then we go to a same fret shape of C and A, and then we move that up 2 more frets to get to D and B, and now we're a full octave above our open string. So here are the shapes in sequence. D and B, E and C, F sharp and D, G and E, A and F sharp, B and G, C and A, and D and B again. So the first thing I want you to do is just run through that sequence, and you can use your fingers for this. You can use a pick and a finger in combination. I don't care how you do it. I just want you to isolate those notes apart from this open G. We're going to throw that in later. So here's your practice session. Just isolate this part of the video and loop back to it and Run through that until you have these shapes totally down. So here we go. Come back down. Okay, so now that you have those shapes pretty much memorized at this point, if you've practiced it several times over, you can now use your pick, or you can use 3 fingers to play the open G in tandem with your fretted strings. So we're going to start first. I'm going to use a pick. I'm going to play those 3 strings. Then I'm going to simply add my shapes along with that open G. So the result we get is a droning G that goes through each 2-note shape. And so within the open strings, we just have a simple G chord. When we go to our next shape, we have a C chord. And when we go to the next shape, we have what implies a D add 4, just without that D note that you would usually play if you played that motion. This time, we're just isolating the essentials of the chord. So a G, going to a C, going to a D add 4, and when we get to here, this shape can be used over a C chord, or it can be used over an E minor chord. You can even get away with using it over a G chord sometimes. But what we have is a unison G against another G. And then we have an E up top. So then we move to the next shape, which in my ear, I hear it as another implied D add 4. So just the same as this, I hear that the same way. I'm hearing a D underneath that being implied. Then I move to my next shape, which is B, G, and then another G, ringing an octave above our drone, okay? Then I go to C, to G, to A. You can use this over an A minor chord, you can use it over a C chord, or you can use it over a D7 sus or a D sus, right? This kind of has a really unique sort of dissonance and sort of sound that's applied in very specific cases. But I would use it over a C chord, an A minor chord, or if you're wanting to go for a D sus sort of sound. And then we're back to a G chord, but this time our D and our B are placed up an octave. And so this creates a really cool moving line that you can play around with as you are moving through chord progressions, especially in the key of G. So I'll play all of those again, starting from the bottom. So what's a real song that we can use this idea over? Well, I like to use this on Is He Worthy by Andrew Peterson. So we usually play the chorus of that song. If you're in the key of G, you would play C, going to D, to E minor, to D, and then we have G over B going to C. And that's all well and good. It covers the full harmony We're utilizing most of the strings on the instrument, and so we get a full spectrum of sound. But a different approach is to really accentuate the melody with moving lines that are highlighted by the articulations we have moving from shape to shape of the neck. So let's identify the melody first. So if we're at the chorus, you can go listen to the chorus, but I'll just give it to you. We're going to have an E, going to an F sharp, going to a G, down to F sharp, and then D to E. All right? So the shapes that we'll use to accentuate that, we're just going to plug in from what we practiced. So if I have E, I'm going to play my G below it. And then I have my F sharp, play my A below that. And then G with B below that. And then come back down. And then when I get to D, I'll play my F sharp. And then coming back up to the G and the E, right? So we have this. So then if I use this in the greater framework of the harmony, where I have the bass notes of the chords being played, in this case, if I'm just using those three strings, I would usually have a bass player cover it. In this case right now, I don't have a bass player, so I'm going to outline the bass note myself. And so the shapes above are still the same, they're just played with different fingers. So here's what it would sound like in context. All right, so that's one way to do it. When I get down to this G over B, there's a lot of tension in that F sharp ringing against that G. And so if you find that to be a little bit too grinding, right, a little bit too dissonant, you can opt to not play that F sharp. There's nothing hard and fast other than you got to play the right notes in the key. But you can just sub that with an open D, and that totally works fine. And then move up to that C shape, right? So here's what that sounds like in the greater context. So that's how we can use that over a real song that people are using in their worship services. And it's just a different way to accentuate the melody that is being sung corporately by your congregation. It's not better, it's not worse. Like I said, it's just different. So when we play this, you can really get in and dig deep into the articulations by sliding up to those notes. So here are the notes if I slide into them. So I have. Okay, throw the bass notes in. Here's what it sounds like. Right, so we can get a little bit more nuance, a little bit more variation in how we phrase the melody with our new chord shapes. So you can use this over any other application too. So if I have a chord progression where I'm, if I'm in the key of G and I'm moving from a 4 chord on C, and then I go to D, the 5 chord and I hold on to that so it then cadences to a G chord at like, I don't know, the start of a chorus or a verse or something. A lot of times I like to move through these shapes over that 5 chord to give other members of the band, especially like the drummer, if I'm playing this really obvious, they can accent that motion and you get a really more dynamic performance. So instead of playing and just strumming through that, I might do something like this. Right? I'm creating a little bit more interest within the chords, and I'm not just staying static on one chord. I'm moving and creating a counter melody that then leads us to that resolution point on the G. So do what you want with this. Take it, run with it, play with it. You can apply it to some of your favorite songs that you like to sing at church, and you can make up new melodies to go within those songs, right? Pretty much anything is fair game. So have fun with it. I'll see you in the next one.